this country, not a single land will be sold by the government. Everything will go in the hands of the Gambian people in terms of ensuring that the Gambian people work for their development. That's what we are talking about. The gardens in Kafute, etc., should be owned by our own people, and the cooperative bank will assist them to be able to get the resources to be able to produce.
Thank you.
That's what we are talking about.
Doctor, yeah, is your question actually answered? Yes, but also is your question answered?
Because I got confused because the system is so vague that I got confused. Because why? Because Norway did not build their sovereign wealth through a centrally planned cooperative system, but by tapping into their oil industries. And Sweden did not build their sovereign wealth through a centrally planned cooperative system, but by having what they call the mixed economy, where the state allows free enterprise and innovation and ingenuity, but also the state also comes in to ensure that the market is regulated. But also when it comes to labor, Honorable mentioned that we cannot allow our people to be exploited and paid less than the value of their labor because investors are coming. That depends on the government in power. Once a serious government put the right regulatory frameworks in place, the right laws, the right labor laws, no investor will come and exploit our people, because when you come to invest in the Gambia, you will work within the framework of our laws, environmental laws, our labor laws, but also in a free market economy, there's nothing wrong. And nobody is saying that all our land will be owned by foreigners. There are young Gambians who can also invest in the Gambia, own land, own fishing trawlers. Haruna, it has been tried and tried and tried. When governments go into business, they fail, because governments are not good at doing business. They are good at making the right regulatory frameworks so that money is created and that wealth government uses it through taxes or other means to invest it in people, schools, water, electricity, roads, and healthcare.
Honorable Sallah, you want to react?
How are you getting money from the Saudi fund, Kuwaiti fund, and all these funds in the Middle East? You mean all those investments in oil is owned by private owners outside, or is it really in the hands of the Saudi and other governments? Do you know how those people manage and accumulate wealth? You're saying Norway does not accumulate sovereign national wealth.
I did not say that. I did not say that. I said they made their sovereign national wealth not through a centrally planned cooperative system, but by tapping down their wealth, their oil resources.
Their oil money is going where?
It's going to a sovereign wealth. That's how they made.
Who is in control of the sovereign wealth?
The state.
Well, what are you talking about?
No.
What are you talking about? Let's be honest.
No. It's very clear. What I'm saying is, Saruna.
No, what you are saying is not clear. You are trying to.
It's about how it is created. That is what the difference is. How is wealth created? Gonga is saying that the wealth can be created through a cooperative, centrally planned cooperative system. We are saying that we don't believe that. We don't believe in that. We don't think that are succeeded elsewhere. Wealth can be created.
Who is saying centrally planned system? Those are your words, because you want to give an image. That is the image, and let's be open. We are saying currently the central bank is the depository of the consolidated fund of the nation. What is there is tax money, loans and grants. That has not enabled the country to build its productive base. We are saying, if you want to build the roads that you're talking about, the infrastructure you're talking about, where are you going to get the money? That is the fundamental question.
There are many ways in which you can get the money.
Where?
For example, if you create the right environment, you can tap into bonds.
You can tap into what?
Into bonds. For example, if the Gambia had the right framework, the right environment, diaspora bonds are there. There is global capital whereby investors can come. There are public-private partnerships to invest in the infrastructure sector to build roads and bridges. But also, there is nothing wrong with what America is doing now. Today, they are going to invest $500 billion to build roads, to build bridges, to build car charging stations. But these are also, they are making money from global bonds. So for me, I don't think that money should be made through the centrally planned cooperative system, but there is funds out there through the public sector, through trade, through services, to make money, and this money can be invested in infrastructure.
Okay, the question again. We have the central bank. It depends on tax, grants, and loans. Where are you going to tap money to put in that central bank to build your roads? You are saying float more bonds, have more treasury bills, borrow more. That's what you are saying. If you borrow, you must pay.
Of course.
How are you going to pay? Where are you going to get the money to pay?
By making sure that you diversify the economy and expand your revenue base. Because right now our revenue base is contracted. Our agriculture sector is not properly, the potential is not properly tapped. Our ports, our state-owned enterprises are not really bringing dividend to government. So it's not the problem of the central bank. It's about we've not been able to diversify our economy, tap into those sectors that can bring us the funds that we need, like the agricultural sector. It is underperforming. We are doing subsistence farming and seasonal farming. Our tourism sector is not bringing what it's supposed to bring. We are doing seasonal tourism. We have the marine resources, which is not also bringing money. So it's about coming with the right ideas and innovative ideas to make sure that we diversify our economy and make sure that we also tap wealth from other sources through taxation, through investments in agriculture, investments in services to bring in money.
You are simply saying the same thing again. You are saying loans and loans and loans. Bonds is not, well, what is bond? Can you explain bond?
No, it's not this is not an economic class.
Well, yes, it's important for it. No. But what I'm saying is America now,
for clarity, for purpose of clarity.
America now rely on bonds. And what China has simply done to come to Gambia, establish a state construction company during Jawara's time, build your state house, build the Supreme Court building, build your stadium, you pay, they deposit it in the bank in Britain or US, and generate resources from that, and then invest in the American bond market, because America is a country of last resort where all these people will deposit their money, and the American government can rely on bonds to be able to provide infrastructure. But we are talking about Gambia. We're talking about Gambia, not America. So the issue here is, where are you going to tap the resources other than loans? You are talking about bond, it's nothing but loan. Treasury bill is loan from government, it's domestic borrowing.
Through foreign direct investment, through foreign portfolio investments. This can happen in the Gambia, and it's happening because with the Gambia today, our FDI is very small because we do not create the right environment. Other countries are tapping into FDI. That is why I said that we live in a highly hyper economy, and countries that are able to create the right environment to attract global wealth, wield it and use it wisely, are able to transform very quickly.
Okay, let's say you've attracted the global wealth. How will it reach the farmer?
This will be your
how will it reach
on
the farmer?
this, and we'll give him his last, and we'll proceed. I think we're rumbling now.
How will your global wealth reach the farmer?
Well,
to provide seed, fertilizer, and farming implement to the farmer.
What we are saying is that we have to move away from the kind of farming we are talking about, giving hosts and fertilizer to farmers. That is a cooperative system whereby you say you create a cooperative and give hosts, and we are going to mechanized agriculture, where we use machines and new knowledge for agriculture. And this can be only done by attracting foreign direct investment to invest in the agricultural sector.
You hear some of them clapping for you, but let them answer the question with you. We have farmers now without fertilizer, farming implements and seed. You want to mechanize. How will you get that to them? You're going to give it to them free of charge? Are you going to sell it to them?
Well, that is the difference, is that we cannot.
How will you do that?
Well, I mean, your question is vague.
It's not vague.
It's very vague.
How will you get resources to the farmer to produce?
That is up to the farmer. If anybody wants to get into agriculture, what we do is to provide access to finance to do agriculture.
Access to finance.
People money and farming.
May we bring this house in order? Let's bring the house in order, gentlemen. House in order. House in order. House in order. Honorable Sallah, a question for you from Mohammed Tex Kanyi, I think. It says, there is no doubt that Coalition 2016 registered a number of successes, which includes regime change. However, should and can any individual partner of Coalition 2016, in this case PDOIS, take glory of uttering those successes while abdicating responsibility for the failures? If yes, why? If no, why?
I've said that Coalition 2016 developed in stages. The first stage of ensuring peaceful transfer of power is what we participated in. That's obvious to everybody. The second phase of the executive assuming office and formulating policies and implementing them, we are not a part of that. Pure and simple. And that is the phase that people are criticizing. But we are not part of that. We did not abdicate responsibility that we even struggle to assess so that we can have an agency for sustainable socio-economic development. We would have tapped all the expertise in the country. But that had not actually happened. So essentially then, what is happening is the executive implementing its policies. That's why we are not taking responsibility for that.
Dr. Ismaila, the same from Mohammed Tex. Like you, I am a firm believer of the principles of collective responsibility in a group's commissions and omissions during the course of executing its responsibilities. Differently, in further dissecting the course or courses of a problem for meaningful lessons to be learned, recognition must be made on who championed the failures that have been registered for the purposes of self-evaluation. In the case of Coalition 2016, who do you think should be the champion and why?
The champion for what?
Failures of Coalition 2016.
Well, I wouldn't call them champion of failures. I wouldn't call them champion of failures. What I have always said I'm arguing is that the coalition had two objectives, strategic objectives, as explicitly written in the coalition agreement. That one is to effect regime change through peaceful means, and second, create the enabling environment to have elections in a level playing field. They succeeded in one, effecting regime change, but the second one did not happen. So I wouldn't call them champions of failure. I would say that there were weaknesses, there were failures, and the agenda that was promised did not come to fruition.
Now, I'll ask this question to you. A senior journalist person just texted me this to say, want both of you to answer this question, by the way, but we'll start with Honorable. Says, you both have very interesting ideas, but will you be willing to work together on behalf of the Gambian people? That is DOI and Citizens Alliance. Honorable Sallah?
Well, we have said that all forces that are interested in system change must work together to save the Gambia. That's what we have said. It is left for Citizen Alliance to define itself. But for us, we want to eradicate poverty. We want to eradicate injustice. We want to eradicate ignorance. How to get wealth farmer, to eradicate the poverty of that farmer, to that young student finishing school at GTTI to come and have a productive base to work. That woman who wants to sell does not have any means to do so. How to get wealth to that person so that they can produce is fundamentally our objective. This is not centrally planned. It is not talking about the state owning the land. It is saying the people owning the land. It's to give fertilizer, seed, farming implements to those people. It is saying that that person who owns the milling machine is a person owning the milling machine and processing. That person owning the shop is the person owning the shop and using it to sell to earn an income. That is what we are talking about. That a state like Gambia, you need a cooperative financial system that will not charge interest on that farmer, interest on that person, young person coming from school, interest on that woman who wishes to sell. Interest will disappear. What is important is a revolving fund to make those people productive. If CA definitely is seeing Gambia in that light, well, obviously, we are evolving to become partners. The other elements of the private sector, there is no country in this world that will not encourage a private sector. What DOI is in fact saying is that the private sector in the Gambia should be linked to the private sector of Africa so that we can build up the base rather than waiting for oil companies from other lands to come and invest in our oil resources. South Africa may have the potential, Egypt may have, all these countries may have the potential to be able to come up to an African investment bank, to build the companies that will be able to harness our resources. This is what we are talking about.
Thank you, Dr. Ceesay.
That's a point of convergence of agenda between DOI and CA. And what is that? That we need to ensure we make the right policy, social policy investments so our people can live in dignity. So our young people can have jobs, decent jobs that pay, so they can live in their country in dignity, so that our hospitals are well staffed and well equipped, and there is health care where you are scheme where every Gambian who needs medical care gets it affordable, so that there is enough electricity, there is enough water for our people so they don't have to drink well water or fetch water but in their own homes. So there is the basics. That's what we want. Now, how we go about it, how we create the wealth to really fund those social projects, that is where there's a bit of a difference, but I don't think the differences are so rigid that we are not able to make a compromise. But like I said, it's politics. What is important is that the agenda is right, the framework is right, and it can bring sustainable development and transformation to this country. We can work with any party that has that agenda.
We would have closing statements by both, 5 minutes. We will also let both of you choose a language of your choice to make as some sort of a summary of the discussion and your ideas, and you may choose Wolof or Mandinka for both of you. But before we get to that, there's so many questions are coming in, but let us please remind everyone, this is a beginning. We cannot exhaust everything in a single debate. So we will therefore have to bring this to an end sooner or later. They've been standing for 2 hours, and definitely we cannot be here all night. But Honorable Sallah, I'll start with you. This one says there is a pool of educated Gambians everywhere in the world. Would you, as a president, as a presidential candidate, as a political party, consider tapping into that wealth of knowledge for growth for Gambia?
Well, that's precisely so. That is what was recommended to this government, to create an agency for sustainable socio-economic development, to create an expert bank. We have emphasized that we must create an expert bank, create a database for every Gambian who has something to contribute to be featured in that database. They will be the people that you can put together to develop your public sector, to develop your private sector, to develop your cooperative sector, to develop your informal sector. These 4 sectors must be developed in any economy in developing countries before you can eradicate poverty. And our people do not only have the capacity in terms of technical knowledge, but they may also have the financial resources to invest. So you must be able to pool them together and pool them so that strategically you can take them to the sectors where they can invest and facilitate the productive development of our economy.
Doctor, same question.
Yes, of course. We believe that the diaspora has the power in terms of knowledge and wealth. And within CA, one of our vision is to tap into that wealth and power. Therefore, when the current government went to Brussels to attend the so-called donors conference to get money, I think it should have also been accompanied with a brain conference to also attract Gambians who are working abroad in very different institutions, in very many different sectors and fields with big expertise to come and help build this country. So we're open to that.
Last question, really, I'll have to bring this to an end sooner. The inequality in the Gambia is so apparent, Honorable Sallah. particularly between rural and urban Gambia. What would you do to bring about development to Gambians and some sort of equality?
It's dependent. And they can be productive sectors, where if you have a land that can be the village land, the cooperative bank will give them seed fertilizer farming implement to produce, and it goes into the village treasury for the buying of milling machines, etc. If they have a sort of a pond, you can transform it into aquaculture so that they can earn and put it in the village treasury for the provision of the things that you need, infrastructure that you need in the village. The village, as a productive unit, provided funds by the cooperative bank, will enable each family farm to earn enough to be able to invest in infrastructure, in proper housing in the village setup, so that you will have housing schemes that will be devoted to the villages, and consequently that will upgrade the development of the villages. Not only that, look at what is happening in Katong, Patakunku, Sanyang. You are mining, but there is no percentage that is retained for the village. You must have a memorandum of understanding and an agreement that will ensure that a given percentage will go to the village. Royalties will be paid by all the NAWEC poles, Gamtel poles, and other poles that you put in villages to be able to sell electricity, sell credit, in order to ensure that each village has earning capacity to be able to provide the services that the village needs. So there is absolutely no doubt that the law of balanced and proportionate development must be implemented to the full, where the urban area will develop side by side with the rural area. That's why we're talking about the civil service reform is to augment salary on the basis of the quantity and quality of work done. But you can only do that by enhancing the earning of sovereign national wealth. And if you do that, then the housing system, you can have civil servants having built housing system for them, they can be earning and paying to own the houses. That's how we intend to change the social
How do you address inequality?
Just to pick up from him, yes, enhance sovereign national wealth, even though maybe perhaps differently, and invest it in social projects. For example, one of the reasons why there is so much inequality today, because there are no equal opportunities in this country. Education, there is no equality in education. Educational provision and access, if there's no quality, it's not also equal. It means that a child born in Kololi gets access to more quality education than a child born in Kolior. So we are going to make sure that we really have interventions that can ensure that every child born in this country has equal opportunities by investing in quality education for every part of this country, and also by coming up with interventions to really remove or to blur to some extent the rural-urban dichotomy by reversing development, by coming up with housing projects. Likewise, we are going to build 100,000 homes, which will be in the rural areas, making sure that young people have jobs by providing skills training and building their capacities. Because once you provide people with jobs and they are paid well, you increase standards of living. When you increase standards of living, you build a bigger middle class. Wealth is created more, and then that wealth is invested back into the people. And in the short to medium term, you don't eradicate equality totally, but at least you balance the country in a way whereby at least every Gambian has access to the most basic needs and lives a dignified life.
We cannot thank enough Mr. Saul Fraser and Global Properties for agreeing to facilitate this debate today financially. And we want to say thank you to him and his company. And we want to encourage the private sector to support such initiatives. We all learn out of it. And our democracy can only grow by the exchange of ideas. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. Our politics will not change if you continue drumming Saurba and Baramasendeng and eating Benachin. It's the battle of ideas, it's policies, it's engaging with the public that will bring the change that we desire. A lot of young people have been registered this year. I am very proud that a lot of young people are now taking part in the process. We have to take responsibility. We have to own our country. And I think our young people needs to be majorly commended for that. I've seen a lot registering. Now, Honorable Sallah, you have 5 minutes. You can make points, you can make emphasis, you can make closing statement in English.
On the 21st of January, the former president left the country. But on the 20th, not a single soul was in the street. The country was a desert, hanging on the balance of probability. I remember going to where President Barrow resides, and we were anticipating anything on that day because it was the final day. Either ECOMIC will come by force and bombs would have destroyed the State House and the bunkers that are there would explode, the hospital close by, the whole of Banjul would have been in flames. And it is now incredible that at that material time, many Gambians were calling for that to happen, not knowing what the implications would be. But we kept a steady course, guided ECOMIC, ensured that the security forces in the country were united under the president, under the republic, to facilitate the entry of ECOMIC as a solidarity force rather than a force of intervention. That is how Gambia welcomed President Adama Barrow at the airport, and thousands, tens of thousands of people celebrated his coming and took him to his residence. We achieved that as a Gambian people. The next phase is for us to remain united, to know that our enemy now is poverty. Our enemy now is ignorance. Our enemy now is injustice. We are capable of putting that to an end. We are going to die. What legacy are we going to leave behind for our children and children's children? Are we going to continue to clap for politicians because of words? Or are we going to listen very carefully, thoughtfully, to gather ideas that will enable us to make informed choice? What is the purpose of this discourse? It is to help each of us to take ownership of our minds, to know that we are sovereign, to know that we own this country. And because we are sovereign, we are the decision makers. And therefore, this country will sink if we don't think and take the right decisions. It will float if we think and make the right decisions. This is the starting point of the battle of ideas. It must not be seen as battle of individuals. Ideas can be exchanged. I heard Dr. Ceesay mention sovereign national wealth.
2 minutes, sir.
I believe that is what they also wish to rely on to fight poverty. I don't see how we can fight poverty in any other way, through loans, grants, and taxes. We must harness our sovereign national wealth that belongs to all the people. The question is, how are we going to distribute it to be able to eradicate poverty? It will continue on that score.
Before I give Dr. Ceesay the floor, I'd like to thank very much iAfrica TV for partnering with us here today and providing the screen. I'd like to also thank Gambia Music Store for providing the sound system and the lights. I'd like to thank Kir Fatu Network, Gambia Talents, Guy Nako, and all of the media here today. This is in fact our debate. This in fact is the new beginning, and the only winners today is the Gambian media and the Gambian public. Dr. Ceesay, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Haruna. Our people have suffered for far too long. Since gaining independence in 1965 from Great Britain, we have not been able to build a country where every Gambian citizen will live a dignified life. We are not able to feed our people. We are not able to care our people when they are sick. We are not able to give our children quality, relevant education where they can have mastery and compete in the global stage. We are not even able to give our people clean water, let alone clean or cheap electricity. We are not able to build good roads. We've not done anything for ourselves. The time has come for us to change and transform this country. I agree with Honorable that we need to unite. The Mandinka is not the enemy of the Wolof. The Fula is not the enemy of CA. UDP is not the enemy of NPP. The Christian is not the enemy of the Muslim. We have a common enemy, all of us. Whether you are Doi, whether you are CA, whether you are a Manjago or a Mandinka, whether you are a Christian or Muslim, whether you are a nationalist, a communist, whether you are a monarchist, we all have a common enemy in this country. We've not been able to fight and win against this common enemy because we've not been united. And our differences have always been out there. What is that common enemy? Poverty, disease, bad roads, lack of education. And until we unite, this enemy will stay and it will defeat us. In 1965, Gambians made a very difficult decision whether to vote and leave the British Empire or to stay within the orbit of the British Empire. Nobody believed in the potential of the Gambia to exist as an independent nation. They said it was not a viable country. And in fact, it was called the birth of an improbable nation. Yet, we persisted, we made it. We gained independence. We were tested in 1981, we made it. In 94, we were tested again, we made it, and in 2016. We are more hopeful that if we can vote to get independence in 1965, under difficult circumstances, and vote to bring democracy and the rule of law in 2016 under difficult circumstances, I see no reason why we cannot go back to the polls in 2021 and vote to bring development to this country. Because our independence and democracy is meaningless if it is not accompanied by development. Now is the time for us to put our differences aside and work for this country. It takes one generation to build the country for the next generation. We have to build the country for the next generation. It is projected that we will be 5 million people in 2050. To build a country for 5 million people starts now. What jobs will we create for them? What jobs will exist in 2050? What kind of roads do we want to build in 2050? How much energy do we need, and how do we generate that energy in 2050? How do we ensure in 2050 where there is energy security, there is food security, there are global challenges, climate change? We all see what's happening. How do we bring climate resilient societies? How do we adapt to climate change and build a country so the next generation that will come and find a country where they can live in dignity and not make the decision to die at sea than stay in their country. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Adam, I saw you dozing there for a minute. I was wondering what happened to the sound. But I'm glad we're here. One of our sponsors is the Forbes Academy. If any of us here are wondering why and how these two honorable gentlemen are able to deliver such powerful speeches and arguments in public speaking, you ought to see Pastor Forbes, and he is a wonderful trainer in public speaking. He's one of our sponsors tonight. Honorable Sallah, you have 5 minutes, Mandinka, Manjago, Jola, Wolof, but any local language to address the general public on any points you wish. It could be on Coalition 2016, or it could be addressing a general point that the public needs to be aware of. 5 minutes, sir.
Bankuding yamu kangolet. Bankuding yamu sembolet. Kango ning sembo. Naman taratunting londoleka. Fahamureleka. Akatinya ronat. Mengye Gambia batandi. Wale mu balangot. Katonya je nyala ye balang. Ya soso. Ye dung ding kokon. Wole ya kendi mol meta ka wulu bata kono. Ka mem bata kono. Ka keba ya bata kono. Ka fa bata kono. Kele dindingol tu bata kono. Ye mem bata kono. Keba bata kono. Fa bata kono. Mamare gol wonyo. Ela balu wala nafali. Wole nyan badna. Ate ban nola londo kon. Ate ban nola tonya kon. Ate ban nola kambengo koma. Banko wuluta wole kan. Pour nga ke kilinti. Gambia dingol be yeke kilinti. Killing mam fess ya kilinti. Bawo killing killing carte que c'est killing wole bebe. E ka wole karfa pour le président o tom. Karfa enta tamala pour que foire ya bay. Musulo la ñata tamala pour que tilimbale ya bay. Musulo la ñata tamala pour que fahamu bale ya bay. Ni nga wasilo londro la tamala dron yirwobe sabatila dahabe sabatila mo bebe dahala ñim banko kam al nimbara. Liñu wone moy ne pour nek doomi rew lamu laaj moy baat doomi rew ya baat la doomi rew ya doole la doole boo xam ne suñ jiitalul xel mu nekk neen ñun ñëpp xam nañ ne doole ak baat soo ko wéerul ci dëgg mu nekk neen soo ko wéerul ci xam-xam mu nekk neen soo ko wéerul ci ànd mu nekk neen bon nag ñun doomi Gambie dañu war a ànd topp dëgg sàkku xam-xam pour xam dëgg suñu deful loolu dinañ continuer di juddu ci coono di màggee ci coono di màgget ci coono di dee ci coono doom ci coono dee ci coono sët ci coono dee ci coono lim laaj mooy ñu xam ne ñun ñoo moom réew mi xeet goo mun a jógee diine goo mun a jógee foo mun a jógee fekk doomi Gambie nga yaa ñëpp a yem mu mel nag émo boobu li mu laaj mooy boole suñu doole yi wante foog ñu jiital suñu xel yi bon nag suñu toggin ci réew mi tey li mu laaj ku nekk ci ñun laaj boppam ban yàq ndóol dàq coono dàq réer dàq noteel suñu demee bi gis yoon woowu ñu jaar ci rek coono jeex na ndóol jeex na noteel jeex na réer jeex na ñu mun a tedd ci kaw suuf nit loolu la moom rab moom judd ci coono ba dee ci coono nit mooy ñàkk a tedd loolu la ñu moom nañ aw ci yooni nit ñun ñëpp ñu mun a mucc jërë leen jëf ci déglu.
jërëjëf Honorable Sallah. Dr. Ismaila Manjago, Jola, Serir, Olof, 5 minutes.
Barka bake Haruna mbe tentula mbe jaila kato minke kaje ko nyin kacha e soto nyin kacha dum muna sabu muna daliloti wolon pour nga na jang kacha nga jube mba banko mba tamandi la nyaadi le banko la na fulo mba do ko la nyaadi le ni nga do ko nga ke banko dingol kan pour ka bata bay e sa banko di o banko ding e si sabatino gambia banko kan foroya kono anin horomo kono anin bunya kono gambari ngo meta batala kabari ngam fan soto fo sagne muka ku kenon faye na molla jolman si ikara sate dolte molman jio soto la sul kono ji senango tije molman kurango soto l'hôpital man soto silol man betia sagne lolo wo molle ka cartel faye senelal batata la seno me nafa fonding kelman do ko soto bari sagne lolo kana carte tanka fay oto meta carte fayola le baw ni la carte me nafa baw mi yalon ko wala ka jiyo sabab ji senango anin kurango anin l'hôpitanol anin sila kendol anin do ko pour funding kel carte le kawo sababu to nin carte ma wo finan oto na carte fayo hani kabi aman nafa soto oto sagne wato sitale pour nga kuning nga nyaayele nga na moy politicien la mi yalon ko wala si ferol mi yalon ko wala si gambe bondi batakono balu day soneya fondinke do ko soto momo sasare se jarebe damen ndingole karango mi yalon ka abetiata le isaje asina fa o wato le kana siten mais o so ka nyaadi le nga kambeng nga si fatam fanso bay fatam fansi nga bay o don si karo sabatino gambe bankun kan on me mo betentula mbal jeyla ka foko nyimu kacade kacha mi yalon ka kumata bake ni monata bi ako aliya karafa bankola aka nyinin ka kudantan la ako alin karafa la jata kende ala alla balu aldingola karango alla silo bawo nafulo min ka doku ani min ka kaji akatara telebulu woto wato sita ning wo monata aya nyinin ka bankola ala nyinin ka ku sabala itolon jumadi ya jiko sotole bang ya balafa sotole bang ya hino sotole bang ni mo sotote banko dilela ni ko daje il munati ne dunta politiko kono podun ka banko dingol na falom bang fo kete fo ngona fa sabanjango ilafta ka muneke fere ju malle betebul ba politiko mu ferolati ninning question sabol amari ma jabeno anyama oto mol mi yalon ko manjana kan karte dila bari ba jabila nyaali le wolon ko ning kata sifal politician yana lo gambe dingol nyaato ka fo ilafta ka banko samba nyaadi le abako bi dara do ko ñola rek ina ye interview ya fo be do ko kala nyaari le ani munela expertise ti dandi be do ko dile la or memo be tentula mbal jayla bake fang nse wota bake. We have another 2 minutes for Wolof.
I think we will provide it. You used only one of your 2 minutes, so you had an excess 2 minutes. You can have it now.
jërëjëf suma mbokk yi di leen santa di leen gërëm di gërëm Haruna mi nga xam ne moom moo waral jotaay gi tey jotaay bi am solo sax ñëw toog fii ñëw waxtaan ñun mi nga xam ne ñun ñooy politiciens yi bugg a dem si doomi réew di ne dénka leen ñu réew ku la wax nga dénka ko réew nag am na lu mu la wax mooy dénka ma sa dunda sa wérgu yaram sa doom yi seen jànga seen yoon yi ndox ak courant ak seen kaaraange kon kooku balaa nga koo dénk réew war nga seetaat kooku mooy kan ndax am na jikko ji ndax am na pas-pas bi ndax am na éene bi ak yërmande bi pour ñu dénk ko réew xam-xam moom waaw mën nañoo laaj waaye soo amee xam-xam nag amuloo yërmande sa xam-xam amul njëriñ nga am xam-xam amuloo yar amuloo teegin sa xam-xam amul njëriñ nga am xam-xam amuloo yërmande sa xam amul njëriñ kon foog ñu seet jikko yooyu noonu ñu tënka ko ñu xam ndax kii mat naa dénk réew ñaari bi mooy lan mooy sa pas-pas lan nga bëgg a def lan moo tax nga dugg si politique pour njëriñ askan bi la ndax pour njëriñ sa boppa ñetteel bi yan jéego nga bëgg a jël yan pexe parce que politique mooy pexe pexe yi lan naka ngaa liggéey koom-koomi réew mi pour nga jël ko nga def ko si doomi réew mi pour gis ne képp ko xam ne yaa ngi si biir réew mi sa lépp mot ndaw yi am xëy fu ñoo xëyee seen xëy njëriñ leen ku feeb laa faj foo nekka ñëpp am ndox bu set bu sell la am courant bu set bu sell la te yomba yoon yi baax suñ doom yi mun a jànga loolu lañ bugg a biir Gambia fii kaaraange am soo nekkee sa kër wala si biti di nga xam ne kenn du ñu dal sa kaw gaañ la wala jël sa alal pour ñu am nag am loolu nag foog ñu mën koo nekk benn wax naa ko fi si angale te xaajala bi bari na surtout si mbiri xeet du yóbbu réew fenn daf di yaaxa réew te joolaa bi du nooni olof bi soose bi du nooni saraxulle bi te ñun ñëpp benn la ñoo nekk benn ñu nekk Gambia soo génnee olof bi Gambia nekkaatut Gambia dafa des soo génnee beneen xeet tamit nekkaatut Gambia kon ñu nekk benn waaw gis-gisi politique nag munta nekk benn waaye lu gën a am solo mooy benn Gambia lañ gis pour gis ne ñu liggéey réew mi su ko defee képp koo xam ne yaa ngi fi nga di kafe si ngor di kafe si taranga su boobaa suñ ndaw yi am xëy duñu wax nañu dee si géej moo leen gënal daan ñu toog seen dikkaan kon di leen jaajëfal di ñaan nag di ñaax ne waxtaan gi bu mu fi em ñu ñëw di waxtaan ak askan wi ñu gën a waxtaan ñu xam képp ku nekk lan mooy sa pexe lan mooy say jéegoy politique lan mooy say gis-gis suba su ko defee ñu mën a tànn politiciens yoo xam ne ñu mën a defar réew bi.
Ismaila ñaari yëf nga boole ñaari yëf yu doy waar nga boole ab jàngalekat ak politicien loolu foo ko boolee rek moom waaye di leen jaajëfal bu baax kontaan nañ torop waaye nag di digg waa Gambie ne lii lañ fas yéene dinañ fexe ñu woo yeneen kilifa yu nekk ci yeneen parti ñoom it ñuy jàkkaarloo di waxtaan waaye waxtaan booba nuñ koo teralee mooy ne dañoo xool ne tey de li ñoo waxtaan mooy mbéy mi ñu indi ñaar ñu wax seen xel ak xalaat ci loolu buñ jógee ci loolu ñu am beneen waxtaan boo xam ne comme laa doon ñu waxtaanee loolu di wax borom parti yi yëpp nag fukk ak juróom-ñett yi yëpp ne na ngeen pare nañ fugga seen bunte yi pour ñëpp ñëw liñ fi def tey doorte la ñëpp mënuñoo bokk ñëw fii waxtaan bi nu mu yànjee nii nu mu neexee nii nu mu jaare yoon nii parce que ñaari nit rek la buñ fi indi woon ñaar fukki nit kenn du déggante loolu moo tax nag te waxtaani tey bi ñoom seen boppa ñoo ko sumba man sob moo ma ci boole docteur dafa wax waxam wér géejam géeja boobu noonu keeks bëgg koo wéeri ma ne ko déet wooyal say kilifa ma waxtaan ak ñoom ma ne lii ñu gars yi di waxtaan nii de moom xaaral ma dem foofu toog si diggante bi aate waaye kenn rek moo gañe tey mooy Gambia te lii lañ bëgg lii lañ nemoon suñu réew ñuy mun a waxtaan ñun yépp kenn du yuuxu sa morom kenn du tàccu sa morom kenn du saaga sa morom te defe naa loolu am nañ ko fi tey di leen jaajëfal yéen yépp kaddu yi rafet nañ xel yi rafet nañ kon lii sax waxtaan la woon te waxtaan bi ànd ak teey yar ak teggin wane ngeen loolu di leen ñaanal yéen ñaari kilifa yu teew fii tey ne leen ne mat ngeen ay kilifa nii laa def kon donc di leen jaajëfal seen parti yi parce que bu parti yi nanguloon xëy na doo leen fi mën a ñëw tey ba ñëw am waxtaan bi di ñaan yéen la bépp politicien bu nekk ci réewi Gambie nga ne yow mënoo toog jàkkaarloog sa morom ngeen waxtaan bala kenn sànnil karta parce que jamono boobu dafa weesu man awma benn intérêt politique bokkuma ci benn political party Gambia ma ñor waaye Gambie bu ñu ñor nag kim ñor ni ñun war ngaa am sañ-sañu ñëw jaay sa marchandise ñun doomi Gambie ñu jënd sa marchandise loolu la ñoo ñaan di leen jërëjëfal honorable Halifa Sallah di la wax jërëjëf bu baax di la ñaanal yàlla wér ak wérle ak gudda fan ñun yëpp ñu ngi taataan ci yow di jàngee ci yow di royee ci yow ma wax leen na fii 1995 buñ toogee 96 ñu ne nguuri sordaar la maa ngi nekk xale bu ndaw di liggéey Radio 1 American Embassy indi ay xaalis ndaxam ma xaw ma woon dara sax waaye ñu tànnoon ma ne dangaa liggéey ak Halifa Sallah ak President Sonko Godwin moom la woon ñu ñëw Radio 1 FM ñuy wax ci référendum bi jógee foofu wax ci constitution bu ees bi te loolu li ma ci jàngee woon bari na torop docteur Ismaila Ceesay mii bu ma tàmbalee Paradise TV yow laa njëkk a oo ne la kaay nga toog ak ñun ñuy waxtaani politique ndeke yow yaa ngi doon ut nguur sa di ut réew bi man xaw ma ci woon dara waaye man nag di taataan si yow di jàngee si yow ñu def suñ cambia politico di askan gi kon nag yéen ñaari kilifa yii nii boo leen ñëwee fii ngeen waxtaan nii rek laa mën a mel di leen wax jërëjëf Ceesay di la ñaanal wér ak wérle di la ñaanal gudda fan ak nga yàgga suñ kanam yéen ñaar ku ci am réew mi ànd nañoo yow jërëjëf. Let's take a picture in the middle. Let's take a picture in the middle.
Halifa Sallah in file.
Yeah. Well, that was the debate. How about that? Dr. Ismaila Ceesay against the veteran Halifa Sallah. I still have my panelist here, Sajo. That was one hell of a debate.
It was Lamin. I think Gambians were really anticipating it, and by the views you can tell that people were really interested into watching this debate. And I really have to agree with Haruna Jaya, the moderator, that the only winner here is the Gambian people.
Banka, but did you see who won? I know you don't want to go there, but this debate, who won?
Actually, Banka is leaning towards someone.
No, look, I'm leaning towards Halifa for obvious reasons. But what did you see?
No, because I think on the issue of the coalition, I mean, when they went to the economy, I think I had more in common with Dr. Daya than Halifa. But on the issue of the coalition, which was the main thrust of the crux of the debate tonight, I think really Halifa won that all hands down. Because again, he has institutional memory. He was the architect. Yes. And I said this before here. If you want to debate somebody on a document that he wrote, yes, and then really was the one who was behind it, pushed it, fought for it, stood by it, worked on it. Yes. And then later on, even if you want to indict that document and its whatever, attendant issues that came up, you better really have the facts right. And Halifa mentioned something which was very critical in that process. And that is context. Let's go back to 2016. Before 2016, then you can be able to fully judge the coalition. If you don't do that, you want to judge the coalition post 2016, you would have missed completely what actually happened.
But what Halifa did, the approach that Halifa did in this debate, is he completely removed Dai from post-regime change, system change. The issue of system change, he is saying that Dai has absolutely nothing to do with that. The regime change, Dai was part of that. And he is touting that as an achievement, as a big achievement.
Yeah, but I think when he did that, he was attempting to present the cup as half full. Because, remember he said there is a first part and a second part to this process. The first part he touted as achieved, and the second part he touted as not achieved. Yes. So where Dr. gets it wrong is to call the whole thing a franchise a failure. And he's like, no, this is not a failure. It was a glass half full. Let's count our blessings and work towards a more improved system. And a more perfect system. Yes. But don't discount what actually has happened by virtue of saying, well, they failed us, they have failed, Because once you do that, you've completely taken this wonderful project, yes, that has achieved some significant, very significant stuff. Halifa rightly said, when he was talking about the half full, glass being half full, he mentioned what? The courts now, you can go to court when you don't agree, and then the courts might even rule in your favor, the Supreme Court. I mean, you have more candidates, and I even Dr. Ceesay that is dismissed that. Yes. When Halifa said you can run for president now, because of that, he said no, it was because of that. No, it's actually, yes, Halifa is right on that. Once upon a time, look, it's very easy to look back now and make it look like these things were easy back then. You could just go and register and do your thing. No, it was tough, it was risky, it was messy, and it was expensive. So nobody did it. That's why even for UDP, when they were looking for a candidate, they couldn't find one because nobody wanted to mess with this position. So let's just get that out of the way. And you know what? Let's take ourselves back to that moment, then give it the right judgment, rather than taking the judgment day from January 2017 to now, and then really pass that as the full report on the coalition. That's now.
So Saga, the debate is all over. I can see people still coming out of the debate room there. But this was the big night. I mean, this is if you like, the curtain raiser. Haruna, the moderator, is saying that this is just going to be the beginning of what is more to come. Esa, what is your takeaways, really?
I must say that I'm really proud today as a Gambian. I'm seeing this for the first time in the history of this country. Since I was born, I've never ever seen two politicians going head to head like this to debate on issues. It has never happened. It happened for the first time in the history of this country, and I'm proud that I witnessed this moment. I think both gentlemen did well. Halifa, we were able to see, I mean, from his experience, he's able to tell us the genesis of the coalition, which was brilliant. And I think Dr. Ceesay, making his claim that the coalition had failed and the leadership entirely was responsible, he was also able to make his points. One thing that I've observed on the side of Halifa was he was kind of trying to exonerate or trying to, point out DOI as a political party, that he agreed that the coalition had succeeded. Both of them agreed that there were two phases of the coalition. One was to remove Jammeh and the other one was to bring in sustainable change. Regime change and system change. The regime change had succeeded and he took credit for that, collective responsibility that yes, indeed they did well. But when it comes to the failure, which was to effect system change, I saw him trying to kind of remove DOI from that. Okay, that it was the fault, that is why he said it was not the fault of the coalition, but the fault of the executive president. Meaning the blame was on the president and those that were in cabinet. Because when you say executive, it's the cabinet. And that's why people were trying to ask, why didn't Halifa take position when he was offered in cabinet? I mean, a lot of people will say that he refused to be there because Halifa himself said this clearly. I one time remember his interview where he said that, or his write-up, he said, he doesn't want to be fired by somebody, meaning he doesn't want to work under anybody. Okay, that he preferred to fire somebody, but he doesn't prefer to be fired by anybody. And clearly, I wouldn't blame also Halifa for that. I would have said that other members of the PDIS could have been part of the cabinet. Halifa has his choice. I mean, government has three arms: the executive, the legislature, the judiciary. So it's not bad. People shouldn't also say that Halifa was not part of the government. Obviously, he was part of government in parliament. Yes. So, but what I also see more is that I would have preferred for Halifa to respond to more of Ismaila's allegations, because this was a claim that Ismaila made. It was incumbent on Halifa to respond to those allegations, to kind of, dismiss them. That was what I was expecting. That's why even the issue of the courts, that Ismaila said that they should have challenged, they should have tested the courts, to challenge Barrow's failure to respect the agreement. He did not respond to that. I would have expected that to be responded. And also, where he said that, the voluntary agreement, PDIS clearly stated that the president had the voluntary volition. It was out of his volition that he could resign. You still have challenged him there. But I think also what I saw more was, Halifa seemed to understand issues as well. He did not only come to this debate just to only talk about the problems that we experienced in 2016, but then also trying to tell us, in reality, what the Gambia looks. What do we need to do as a country to move forward? I think he has done well. In 2016, in the build-up of the coalition, coming to post-2016. But one thing that I also realized what he said is that it seems like he's telling us that 2016, there was a coalition, but after the election, there was no coalition. What we had was an executive presidency. But I think all in all, they both did well. They're able to tell us what the problems were. We've learned from the challenges, the successes, and of course, the failures that they had. And I think one thing they will agree, both of them agreed, is that there was a failure. But the point of contention was, who was responsible for the failure? Honorable Sallah did not want to take that. I'm glad that he is here. Yes. He did not want to take that responsibility to say, I was responsible for it. Yes. Well, for him, the executive president was responsible for the failure. Yes. And then they did what they're supposed to do, handed over the power to the executive, the president, as the head of the executive, to do the needful, to do what was needed. But he failed to do that. As a result, for him, it was not his responsibility, because also advices were not sought from him as somebody who was part of the coalition. But some will say, well, because he wasn't part of cabinet, that those advice will not be sought from him. But I think that was not also an excuse. He was in government, in parliament, and it's good that for him, he feels like he was more needed in parliament to bring out the wrongs, point out the wrongs, what we need to do to rectify these issues. And I think it's good. I will just applaud both of them. They have done well, and they're able to tell Gambians what really we need to do ahead of 2021 election.
Congratulations, really. For him to take.
Especially after the fundamental lesson is drawn for all of us. on the 2nd of December 2016, for the first time in Gambian history, the Gambian people went to the polls and the results were declared, and a government that was a sitting government had declared that he has lost the election and was ready to hand over power. Just imagine that day. Who on earth ever envisaged that that would ever happen? So if that day is not memorable to us, if that day is not treasured by us, I don't know which other day we will ever treasure. So it was my duty here today to remind people of what happened on that day and to show that the objective of the coalition was precisely to effect that change. And I believe that lesson has been understood. That's what I believe anyway.
But clearly the likes of Dr. Ceesay are not convinced this is what warranted this debate. He said, the claim he made that all of you contributed to the failure there. What you told me when I called you was that you are going to come here and try to convince him otherwise. Would you say you have succeeded in doing that?
Well, he's the only one who should say that, but the facts are clear. I have made a clear demarcation between a government that was brought about and a government after it came into being, what it had to do to serve the interests of the people. I have made a clear demarcation between the coalition as the authority that decides, that is to select a president, campaign, and win an election. Then I showed you the president assuming office and a coalition no longer having power to decide. Well, how can you blame an organization that has no power to decide? And I believe that really explains everything, that executive power is assumed on the basis of the fundamental law of the land, which is the Constitution. And once that is done, then that executive was the one who could decide that I will honor coalition agreements and will move with the coalition. Then we would have had a new memorandum of understanding, a new agreement that will incorporate all the recommendations that we agreed, including the manifesto prior to his election. But I have said that that never happened. So in essence, people saw coalition where it did not exist. They should now see coalition only before the assumption of office by the president. But after his assumption of office, really you had the executive president operating.
I understand you had said that if this were President Adama Barrow or UDP leader Ousainou Darboe, you would have been very happy. What do you say to this?
No, I don't use those terms. It's not fair to mention their names or for them to come. I've always said that, well, I will be fair, because in actual terms, we will sum up the coalition in so many different ways. All of you must remember that Honorable Ousainou Darboe was in prison. Clearly, he would tell everybody that what the coalition did was what was more important than anything in his life. I would assume that. So I don't see where the argument will come. Where people may be interested is what happened within the ranks of the coalition that ultimately led to the type of situation that developed where the coalition as a unit did not continue. Well, you should invite all of us to come again. And well, anybody who invites me dealing with any aspect of the coalition, as I've always said, I'm interested with anybody, as I've said with NAT, I've said with the United Front, as I've said with the coalition, because I've participated in all this, and I have a duty to explain to the Gambian people what I know about those developments, because I believe...
Do you have anything to ask, Honorable, before we...
I gotta say, I'm so proud of both of you and Dr. Ceesay for showing up here today, because I don't care what happens, even though I'm leaning, I have to be honest with you, I'm leaning towards you.
He was actually
as the all hands down winner of tonight's debate. But But you got to give it to Dr. Ceesay for coming out here, doing this. I think it shows maturity on his part, and it shows guts on his part. Because I think he was punching above his weight when he did what he did, but only brave ones do that too. So obviously
They have
Just to also say, personally, kudos to Dr. Ceesay for, bringing up this challenge. I think, like Banka said, it only takes someone brave to challenge a veteran politician like Honorable, especially on a public debate, public platform. And then those that are also taking this to be a personal thing between Halifa and, Ismaila. I'm seeing this more as a national discourse. A moment where Gambians have the opportunity to listen to politicians, not only to tell us what have transpired in this country in 2016, but also to carve a way forward for us. We have seen that in the latter part of the debate where they got into, party policies here and there, because a lot of people, will get clarification today as well when it comes to the differences and similarities between CA and DOI. So we are saying like, oh, CA is younger brother of DOI. You understand? So in terms of ideology and also programs and policies, like he said clearly, debates are schools. They are learning points for us. And I think a lot of us have learned a lot of things here today. So kudos to them. This is not personal. It's not about contestation between Halifa and Ismaila. It's about contestation of ideas. It's about promoting the culture of political discourse, promoting the culture of debate in this country, promoting the culture of continuous engagement to make sure that our leaders are held accountable, to make sure that we promote the principles and values of democratic governance in this country. And I think this is a good starting point. We hope those politicians out there will also be brave enough to come and talk to us, especially as we head towards 2021 elections.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ceesay. Yes. Of course, go ahead before we
Honorable Sallah, see, with this coalition thingy, when people discuss it, they tend to kind of, and maybe it's because they are not very familiar with the history of it. And so you mentioned context, and you kept saying context. Let's put things into their proper context. And for me personally, I think a lot of people miss the context, which is with what we had back then. Barrow was the best candidate we could have ever for this job, and the arrangements that we made were the best arrangements we could do. The document you wrote was the best document we could have had. In other words, whatever could have been done to give us what we so desperately needed at the time was actually what was done, and that's why the change was brought about. But people don't seem to understand the environment at the time and what led to these things. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because I know the context part. People tend to not understand. It's very easy post 2016 to look at it and say, oh, they have failed. And I've been hear people say, look, they gave us Barrow. And you're sitting there going, if we didn't have Barrow, who were we going to have? Seriously.
If you look at the situation, time was an element. I kept on emphasizing that. 14 October, we agreed. 17 October, 3 days later, we considered an agreement and signed. And the agreement incorporated the holding of a convention. We went to a convention. You can see Dr. Ismaila Ceesay did not agree to participate in the convention. He wanted to go. At the convention, we had a scheme of electing a candidate. But if you hear the leaders of the different parties, they talked about how they saw each other here and there. So essentially, I can speak for myself.
Right.
I was a candidate. I could have said, well, this is not free and fair, so I'm walking out. But if the objective was free and fair elections among ourselves, then maybe some of us would have said, well, we will not participate.
Right.
But that was not the issue.
Right.
We were trying to find a mechanism to get one person to be the flag bearer.
Correct.
So the whole objective was to get a mechanism that will result in one person being selected as the flag bearer. So no matter how crude the mechanism,
Right.
and obviously some parties could have said, well, how can I allow myself to select 70 people just to come there,
Yeah.
equal to all other parties to select.
Right.
So that was not the notion.
Yeah.
Because if the notion was equity, equality, and fairness per se, then we would not have had a coalition. The issue was what will work.
Exactly. Pragmatism. Everybody had to do what they had to do.
To get one person.
Yeah.
Whoever the person may be.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Thank you very much. We've run out of time. I mean, that was a marathon coverage there. So, I mean, that will be all for this coverage of this debate between Honorable Halifa Sallah of the party and Dr. Ismaila Ceesay of Citizens Alliance. Honorable, by the way, today you didn't don a yellow face mask. That was just... No. Thank you very much, Honorable. Until next time, my name is Nabil. Thank you. How are you doing? Okay, sure.
Okay then. Thank you.
Honorable, okay, thank you. Moro yes, saya okay. Allah debate. Oh yeah, I